Remember that? Hiss and knock. That's all you can do. All right, everybody, we're going to get started so that we have enough time to fit this in during 8th period here today. So for the people that have been here for all 3 debates, I think there's some of you over there that have been here for all 3 of these. They know that I've explained this at the beginning of every debate so that people that are new to this, people that are underclassmen and might want to take this class someday, they understand what we're doing here. But all of the kids arguing today are taking CHS Argument and Debate. It's a college class that you can take here at Bellwood through the University of Pittsburgh. You get college credit for taking it. But one of the things that you've got to do is that every school that offers CHS Debate through Pitt has to, one time throughout the year, hold what they call a school-wide debate where you argue a common topic. So we're the only school involved in this really that's not from Pittsburgh or the greater Pittsburgh area. But despite that, all of us, I think there's maybe 20-some schools involved in this, we're all arguing the same thing in our school-wide debate. And the topic is social and mass media improve the quality of democratic decision-making. And what we'll do is we'll hold these debates. So we have 4 of them today. There's one more on Wednesday. And we take the best debate, we send it to Pittsburgh. It's evaluated out there by instructors, by students, and they pick the top arguer, the top debater from each school that's involved with this. And then at the end of the year, we all get together. We go out to Pittsburgh, and there's basically what they call a statewide debate, where it's like the all-star debaters from CHS get to go out to this thing, and you bring your classmates with you, so there's a nice little audience that's there. But what we've got to do here today is finish out these debates. So we've been arguing this topic all day, and we haven't argued the same topic every time. What we've tried to do is offer topics that were dealing with this issue of social and mass media and decision-making. So we've argued whether or not information gathered through social media creates a well-informed society. We've argued whether or not news organizations are trustworthy. Just last period, we argued whether news media has a responsibility to be honest. And this period, what we're going to argue is that truth is the guiding principle of news organizations. So, I asked this 2 seconds ago. Were you guys pro on this one? Okay, so this is the pro side, and this is the con side, and it's your classic public forum debate, if you've ever seen those before, where you've got the first speaker from both teams makes their presentation, and then they crossfire. The second speakers do the same and then crossfire. We have a grand crossfire and then basically a summary called a final focus. So if you guys, I know it's the end of the day, but I mean, sit back and enjoy these and give them the attention that they need and be a good audience for them. So thank you.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Lucas Tuggy, and I'm a senior here at BAHS. And I would like to start off by first saying a couple words of thanks. Thank you first to all of you for being here today, and second to my partner Phoebe Potter for debating with me. And third, I would like to say thank you to our opponents for agreeing to debate this topic with us. And lastly, to Mr. Naylor for helping me to be the best debater I could possibly be. So today we are here to debate the following. Truth is the guiding principle of news organizations. Everybody today is bombarded by the news. Whether it be political or cultural or anything else, everybody hears about everything. And we are here today to talk about the news. The question before us is, do these news sources genuinely care about the truth and informing people of the happenings of the world, or are they simply in it for the money and a good story? We believe that behind every major news organization, there is a dedication to providing reliable and trustworthy news. Now, by major news organizations, I mean organizations such as CNN, CBS News, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, etc. These are all respectable and reliable news organizations that, according to the Wall Street Journal, provide over 95% of Americans with their news. From the beginning of time, the goal of the news was to spread the truth and let people know the goings-on in the world. Yes, many times it is true some reporters fudge the facts and exaggerated parts of the story. But for the vast majority of news sources, they do their absolute best to provide us with truthful and accurate news. Many people might argue that these news sources are incredibly biased, and in some part that's true. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines being biased as unfairly prejudiced for or against someone or something. But then again, if you think about it, every single person in the world is biased. It's impossible not to be. We all have our personal bias. So if everybody has one, it's impossible not to receive unbiased news. It's impossible to receive unbiased news. Despite the fact we know there is bias in news, we also know and believe that news organizations care about the truth and do their best to ensure that the stories of today are put forth to educate and to inform people. We know today there are also lots of instances of fake news, stories circulating around that are widely believed to be true, which are actually false. Pew Research Center goes deeply into the fake news stories that perpetrated 2016 and early 2017. Some of the more popular stories were greatly circulated and widely believed. For instance, Trump sent his personal plane to pick up 200 stranded Marines. Another was that Hillary Clinton received money from ISIS and provided them with weapons. These are just a couple of the most widely believed but completely fake news stories. These stories, however, are not sent out by major news organizations. They are simply bogus stories made up by people online that happen to go viral. People today believe anything they read online. So the problem today isn't with the news, but rather with the people of today's society who believe anything they hear when they read it on Twitter or Facebook. Despite all this fake news, sources like CNN, Fox, CBS, and Wall Street Journal still remain true to giving reliable and trustworthy news. From the time they were founded, these major news providers were dedicated to giving reliable and trustworthy news to the public. We believe that is still their main guiding principle. At the end of the day, it really boils down to the stories they cover are the stories they cover true or are they lies? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandra George, and my partner Devin and I will be debating that truth is not the guiding principle of news organizations. To begin with, like me and many Americans, we rely on the news organizations to keep us informed and up to date on important information. But often the media fails to do this and instead feeds the viewers unimportant information with the purpose of obtaining viewership and profit. News organizations are often competing against one another for viewership, and there are many cases where there's something positive and significant, but the media won't cover it because it is not going to attract viewers, thus describing how even money is more important principle than giving the truth. News Focus had an article called Media Deception, written by Tim Watts, a veteran broadcaster with 25 years experience. In this article, he talks about how the current media of the United States is controlled by a mere half-dozen owners and CEOs. These 6 individuals have total control over what you see and how information in the world is shaped. Along with that, he tells about how the media avoids stories altogether, lying by admission or mixing the truth with blatant misinformation, hiding the real facts behind the story. The Balance then had an article called How Media Censorship Affects the News You See. Media censorship can be designed to keep information from going public, sometimes to protect news outlets from corporate or political fallout. News organizations are supposed to serve the public interest, but sometimes that's at odds with the owners who control the news voice. This just goes to show that the news organizations would rather protect themselves than give the truth the whole time. The opposing side may say that if truth wasn't the guiding principle, people wouldn't go to the organizations for information. But the fact is, it is difficult for the public to distinguish real and fake news, and there is not many other places to get information. Later on, my partner Devin will go further by explaining how misinformation has changed history, the downfall of journalism, and the relevance of news. Thank you. Would you agree without money, news organizations couldn't stay in business?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Okay. And wouldn't you agree that making money by giving out information is the main purpose of news organizations? Otherwise, they would give out news for free?
Well, you can't really distribute news without money to do it, so yeah.
Okay.
All right. Do you believe news organizations like the ones listed above, that I listed above, like CNN, Fox News, CBS, Wall Street Journal, do you believe that they provide accurate information?
It depends on, like the information or
In
like.
general.
Sure, yeah.
All right. Can we also agree on the fact that all of these fake news stories have never been spread by these news sources?
I cannot confirm that.
All right, the ones that I mentioned above.
Yes.
All right. We can also agree that most news sources are biased in some ways, correct?
Yes.
All right. Do you believe that everybody has a bias of some sort?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to remove bias.
Correct. And bias does not necessarily affect the truth of a situation, simply the way we view it. So because of this, although news organizations may be biased, that doesn't necessarily mean news organizations don't care about the truth, correct?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that just because if they're biased that it's not telling the truth. I'm just saying that even if they are telling the truth, there are more important guidelines, like I said, like making money, which is more important than telling the truth.
So if they were just interested in making money, don't you think we would see a lot more of these bogus stories where they fudge the facts ridiculously just so they get more readers? If they were just interested in making money, they would blatantly fudge the facts and not just not provide accurate reporting like they're doing now. For the most part, in fact, not for the most part, as far as I know and as far as I've researched, these news organizations are very reliable and tell the truth almost all the time.
Well, even if they are telling the truth, they can still be like avoiding stories altogether, like I said, to avoid public fallout.
Well, now, can you give me an example of that?
We'll say like just like a random news organization like CNN or something. They were reporting on Trump, and they don't want viewers who like Trump to not go to their news website, so they wouldn't say anything bad about Trump. So that would be avoiding, just completely avoiding topics. So to keep people to come to them, even though that wouldn't be telling the truth because they're just avoiding stories altogether.
Okay, but it's also, if you're not reporting on it, you can't be lying about it. We're talking about telling the truth here in their news stories and whether telling the truth is the guiding principle behind a news organization.
That's called lying by omission, when you just purposely avoid a story altogether.
Okay,
like you tell most of the facts, but you still don't tell the whole truth.
But you didn't say you're telling most of the facts. You said they completely avoided the story. And if they're just not doing a story, they obviously don't think it's relevant enough for the American people or their viewers who watch their TV show or read their news to listen to.
Well, often they don't give relevant information. They just give information that they feel that the public will watch, even if it isn't important.
All right.
Ready? All right. Good afternoon. My name is Phoebe Potter, and I am a senior here at Bellwood Annis. First, I would like to thank Mr. Naylor for improving my debate skills this school year, my partner Lucas Tuggy, our opponents, and last I would like to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic at hand today is whether or not the truth is the guiding principle of news organizations. And as you heard earlier, my partner and I are in the affirmative of this statement. First, let me readdress the point my partner made that while there's obviously fake news or biased news that is out to make a profit, truth still remains the guiding principle of news organizations. Think about this. The reason the United States of America is so great is that we come from backgrounds from all walks of life. Being a rich and diverse society that contains a few biased news sources only allows people to view real-life events from different perspectives in order to form a more well-rounded and honest opinion. There are always two or more sides to an opinion, and in the middle lies the truth. So while the story may be exaggerated to prove one side more correct than another, the foundation for the stories are to report the truth. In an article titled, "Wielding Claims of Fake News, Conservatives Take an Aim at Mainstream Media" by Jeremy Peters of the New York Times, Peters states the right's labeling fake news evokes one of the most successful efforts by conservatives to reorient how Americans think about news media objectivity. Peters then later goes on to say, traditionally mainstream media outlets have thought of their own approach in the terms of fair and unbalanced, viewing their coverage as strictly down the middle. To continue on the recent blow-up of fake news that has been so widely preached by President Donald Trump, in an article titled, Can the Fake News Trend Be Ironed Out?, Mike Snyder of USA Today quotes Ed Wasserman, Dean of the Graduate School of Journalism at the University of California at Berkeley, is quoted saying, some wonder whether Trump may be seeking to gain an advantage from the situation, turning fake news on its head, to sow confusion among the citizenry. By attacking the mainstream media as incapable of truth-saying, the president-elect advances the notion of a post-truth era. Also, to counteract a point made by the opposition that most news organizations are only out to sell a story and make a profit, news narratives are drawn from tying facts together to interest readers. And although stories have a tendency to exaggerate the truth, the basic story is rooted from the truth. Look at it this way. Personally, as a football writer for the #1 high school newspaper in the state of Pennsylvania, the BA Blueprint, I know that in a football story, there may be exaggerated claims towards certain calls made by officials or personal testimonies from players in regards to other teams' motives. But the guidelines that the Blue Devils had a 10-2 record with 2 players breaking major records still remains true. Finally, I would just like to recap Lucas and I's argument that while there is fake or biased news floating through social media and the internet, the basic principle of truth in the media is still the basis for news organizations. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Devin Zhang, and I would like to thank all of you for coming here to listen to our debate, and I would also like to thank my opponent, also my partner, for being very prepared today. I would also like to thank Mr. Naylor for setting up these debates as well. First of all, I would like to ask a question here. When you tell a story to a friend, should you tell something juicy or should you tell something a little bit more truthful? Was this something that really happened? Well, I believe that you should say, you tell a story about something that actually happened, not something that sort of a little bit is exaggerated a little bit. First, I'd like to reiterate my side's claim on truth is not the guiding principle of news organizations. Imagine this. Say that the news is like sort of like information, sort of like information that needs to be carried from one place to another. And as time improves on, like the method to transport those news gets better, such as highways, then news can be better transported that way from one place to another. But those news can be changed in some way through and through. Like each way that the news stops, the truth can be changed a little bit. The first point I want to make out is that misinformation have changed history in a lot of ways. Truth has never changed history in that much so. For one source, the Economist has written an article on the post-truth world, saying that ever since the start of printed news, more and more audience have come to read the news. So more and more information is being carried to each and every other people. But as time moves on and as more information is being collected, fake news has sprung up. And as technology improves from paper to digital media, more and more information can be generated. So now, in this era, in the age of information, now we have we still have paper paper newspapers, but we also have digital media, which provides news, sometimes correct news, such as CNN or Fox News, and there may be some untruthful news. The second point I want to make is that truth has never been really a part of our society as, like the news organization today has been changing a lot. And in our current age, not many people have started to read news from big news organizations such as the CNN, the Fox News, or the Huffington Post. So as audience declines, then that means the news organizations have to find some way to attract audience or to somehow make money. So they turn to try to make news even probably more exaggerated to appeal to them a little bit. So now the news story is being changed to appeal to the audience they want to hear something that appeals to their sense or to their bias. The last point I want to make is that the news nowadays that's being collected is not really relevant to what we've been because it's not really impacting our daily lives. Since our recent election here, many news stories have been popping up lately, and some of them aren't even really relevant at all. And sometimes those news do not contain enough evidence. And a source, and the Florida International University has published a book known as the Modern Journalism in the Information Age. In this book, the university provides information on why news has turned into such state. As I said before, there has been less and less of an audience that are listening to such news. And finally, I would like to provide a quote by Mr. Nyhan of Dartmouth College, who is providing an insight on our current society. Right now, it pays to be outrageous, but not to be truthful. Thank you.
You good? All right. Devin, okay, so if you're exaggerating an event that took place while also telling the basic facts of what occurred, is the truth then not the guiding principle of the story?
Well, then since when have we been telling the truth then? Then have we been telling the entire truth or only part of it?
Yeah, but telling the entire truth and just telling the truth are two different things. Just because they don't tell the whole truth doesn't mean they aren't telling any truths. Then
I would say that truth should be the guiding principle, but truth is not. And as you see in some of the current news that's been spreading around lately.
Yeah, but they're still telling the truth. And if you say that in some instances that is the guiding principle, then is it not the guiding principle?
But then it wouldn't be truthful. Then it would just be inaccurate news. Then
it's still okay. So back to a football game, saying the backyard brawl this year was kind of controversial.
Yes.
We thought that if we would have gotten that flag, we would have won, but we didn't, and we didn't win.
Yes.
So going back to that, saying that doesn't diminish the fact that we still lost.
Yeah.
So wouldn't in that situation, as well as many other situations similar to that, wouldn't truth be the guiding principle?
Well, I would say that you would probably report on it rather than stating in opinion in a news.
Yeah, but doesn't everyone have an opinion, and isn't there, within the context of multiple opinions that we do have, because we are a diverse society,
Yeah.
Wouldn't the truth be in there somewhere? It'd be the guiding basis for the opinions.
Yeah, but then, yes, then that would be somewhat truthful, but not many people will actually agree to it, though.
Okay. A news organization loses credibility when it is dishonest. Is that not correct?
Could you say that again?
When a news organization, when it lies, is it not then credible?
then it will be not credible as it has lied about its sources.
So then, when a news corporation loses its credibility, it's going to lose its profit, right?
It's going to, and it will also lose the audience as well.
Okay, so then would those news organizations then not exist?
It will not exist, but they are still large enough to somehow, they still have a large enough company to have all those enough like reporters to somehow generate those enough news, the different kind of news.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I also have a question. Well, from the beginning, I thought that you guys were probably going to like say some like the guiding principles of news organization, but I would like to say some of those for you guys. There are five main guiding principles of news. It is truth, independence, fairness, humanity, and accountability. But since like the recent years, like we're still in this like age of information as there's been a lot of information, right? But do you not agree with that truth is being exaggerated a little bit, and also like truth is changing as we like approach like this, like you said, this was what Donald Trump said, like we're approaching in this post-truth era. Do you not think the truth is changing?
I think the truth may be changing, but I think the truth is still always there.
But don't you think that when truth change that the information that's being given to the audience will be inaccurate?
Not necessarily. Like, it's still like honest and it's still being truthful, so.
But if they're being truthful about it, then that means, if they're being truthful, then that means they don't know everything, doesn't it?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Is this thing on? Yeah. Okay. You want to answer the question? No, you go ahead. Okay. You guys ready?
Yep. Do you guys want to go first? No? Okay.
So, Devin,
Yes.
you were saying about because of these news organizations, they would rather have a juicy story rather than a boring story. And a juicy story is necessarily what you said, it's untrue. So why can't like I think it's perfectly possible to have a completely true story that's juicy and still is completely true and can still make them just as much money
Yes, that's possible.
as an untrue story.
Yeah, it's possible, but that usually doesn't occur very often, though.
Where are you getting that? Why does it not occur very often?
Well, that's because you're trying to appeal to a large number of people, right? But not many people will think that way, though.
Think what way? I mean, you're talking about a story. I mean, you can make a completely true story good just in the way you write it, still keeping all the facts. It's just a talent for writing by making a story sound interesting and making it sound compelling to read just in writing it. You don't have to fudge the facts or make stuff up.
But yes, but then that would be a story then, but that wouldn't be news, would it?
Would what? That's what I'm saying.
Just to get back to your point, I agree with that. They can have true stories that are good, but the main reason they are giving these stories to the public is to make money. So I agree with you that they can't be true, but they're doing this for money, not just give out information.
They wouldn't be able to survive and make these stories without money.
Yeah, so the guiding principle would be money.
No, it wouldn't. The guiding principle is truth. But perpetrate the truth and get that truth out there, they need money. They can't do it for free.
I think what Tuggy's trying to say
right.
is that these news corporations are making money because they're telling the truth. Once these news corporations stop telling the truth, they don't become credible anymore. When they don't become credible, people don't go to them as much. When they don't go to them as much, they eventually lose their business. So I think what he was trying to point out is that dishonest news corporations aren't going to be making any money, so therefore they would start telling the truth in order to make more money because people are going to believe what is more credible.
Okay, but here, okay, I'm going to go and give you guys a question here. Since, what would you think have changed history more? Like truthful news or fake news?
I think, let me just to clear this, what would you describe as fake news? Like the Kardashians buying something from
No,
7-Eleven
not that.
or like...
No, that's something like that isn't really changing history though. It's just an insight on someone's life. So
Okay.
really, that doesn't really count.
So,
So something like changing like maybe like a nation's perspective on things.
okay, so, and we're all human, are we not, right?
Yes.
So we're all going to have our own biases and our own opinions, right?
But are we willing to lie to our own people?
And I'm not saying that opinions are lies. You can't necessarily determine whether or not an opinion is exactly a fact or a lie. Somewhere when you gather up enough opinions, like I know from writing blueprint stories, whenever we interview someone, we don't interview just one person. We interview like at least 10 different people just to get a broad spectrum so you understand the actual truth of the story.
But
like
yet-
major news
yeah.
corporations that graduate students with master degrees in journalism know this stuff. I'm only in high school and I know this stuff. People who graduate with like masters in journalism completely understand that and know that in order to get the truth, you have to talk to many different people. So I think if you're going to say that like everyone has their own opinions and bias doesn't necessarily mean truthful news, when you look at enough people with different opinions and a multitude of different biases, you will find the truth.
All right, we got to move on to the final witness.
All right. So basically, the main reason we believe the news is because they do tell the truth. If they were simply in it for the money, we would see many more events where facts were misreported or omitted simply to make the story better, which then leads to more money. When news organizations don't report on a subject, it doesn't mean they're lying. It just means they don't believe it's relevant enough to report on. And as Devin said in his statement, juicy stories do sound better, yes, but it is completely possible to make a story true and reliable while still making it juicy. Now, saying that the news changes stories for the money is frankly ridiculous. Everybody would be in an uproar if this happened. Like both me and Phoebe have said before, bias by no means makes a story false or untrue. Everybody has a bias for one reason or another, and to receive unbiased news is nearly impossible. You can make news completely true, even with a little bias. It is just someone's opinion leaning toward something. Now, like Phoebe said, news organizations exist because of profits. Without profits, they would not exist. And we admit this readily. They make lots of money off of their stories that are true stories. So what happens when they begin lying and people begin to realize that they are lying? They lose credibility, and then when they lose that, this causes them to lose profits, which causes them to go down the drain. And because of this, they need to tell the truth, and therefore that is the guiding principle to ensure that they can continue reporting. Thank you.
In conclusion, My partner and I believe truth is not the guiding principle of news organizations. My partner has explained how misinformation has changed history, the downfall of journalism, and the relevance of news. Throughout the debate, we have given examples on how other principles are more important than the truth, like making money, because without money, they can't even give their information out, and how news organizations are protecting themselves from corporate or political fallout by censoring information, mixing the truth with blatant misinformation, or lying by admission. The Arthur Sutherland, a Washington reporter, said, "Too much of our news is one-dimensional when truth is three-dimensional. In some fields, the vast and increased complexity of news makes it continuously more difficult to tell the public what really happened." As Phoebe has said, sometimes the news exaggerates the story, and that supports our claim that truth is not the guiding principle of news organizations. And I want you to know that it's almost impossible for the public to know when news organizations are telling the truth.
All right, so we only have a couple of minutes left here, and you guys are all welcome to stay here until the final bell so you guys can go. But just out of curiosity, we've done a little poll for every one of these so far today. So how many people would side with the pro that truth is the guiding principle in media? Who thinks this was the best argument you heard here? How many people would side with the other side that truth is not the guiding principle? Interesting. Well, listen, like I said, you guys have, you're more than welcome to stay here. Unless your teacher's moving you, it's up to them. But you can stay here until the bell rang. You only have about 2 minutes left.